Okay, so let's get rid of this, and I'll swap our windows back. It's always a lot easier to animate when you have two monitors. Alright, so I'm going to select all my curves, make sure none of them are hidden, Alt-H, then make sure that they're all selected here, and then hit T, Bezier. So I've just sped up the recording now, and now that it's in Bezier mode, or spline, I don't have to worry about any of those extra keys that I add. They're all going to be added in spline mode. Alright, so now I want to make sure that we're paying attention to all the arcs, and that's rotation as well as location. So I'm just changing my viewport and turning on my motion paths there. So looking for nice little arcs and then tweaking all our positions. You can see I'm a little bit off balance with this pose here, and because it doesn't look bad in the 3D viewport, in the camera viewport, it doesn't matter that it looks a little bit wrong in the 3D viewport. So yeah, you can go a little bit wild if it doesn't look bad in the camera view, that is. Right, so now working on the landing, just working on the arc first. The head is more important than the feet, so I'll come back and do the feet at a later stage. But the main thing is I'm looking for nice rounded arcs, and I'm also trying to do the rotation. And you can see that I'm opening up the curve editor, graph editor, and you can see that some of my keys were a little bit out of whack. And that happens when you have been working in constant mode or step mode, and then you go into spline. They can be askew, but I'm just tweaking them there, making sure that they slow out when I want. And I'm paying attention to the camera view, not the one on the left there, because it's more important what happens in the view of the camera. So I'm just changing all of those keys just by selecting them and dragging all the key handles down. It's a handy little trick. So zooming in at the top view now, just to try and get a nice little arc there, because I want the weight to come to a little bit of a rest. It's going to spiral around. So playing it there, I was happy, so I moved on. Always constantly adjusting, because when you come back to a section, you'll see something that you didn't see last time. So I can see the arc on my motion curves is a little bit flat, so I think later on I fixed that up. But let's go back to normal mode for a moment. So through the power of editing, I've fast forwarded through some of that work, and now we're having a look at the outcome of just that spline pass. It's not quite finished, but you can see I've just made some refining tweaks. Let me scrub through. So I'm starting to refine everything, but you can see I'm not. The way that the feet lift off the ground here, we've got a few issues. The main thing I'm concentrating on first is the head before I fix the feet. And so my head's looking okay, the arcs of my head. There's a little bit of a weight shift problem at the end here. So I don't want to lift this foot up until the weight is over this left leg, his left, the screen right leg. So I don't want to do that until I move everything away from being so aligned. So when we look at this, look at all of my keys, they're all nice and lined up. I don't want to move that foot away from being lined up just yet. I'll do that later down the road. Okay, I think I just hit fast forward, and we're going to add some more keys now. At the end of our spline, we want everything to be animated, so I'm going to work on the jaw now. I already have the keyframes there, but they were just keyframed at 0. So now I'm just going to add a little bit of jaw to our animation, and I'm just copying and pasting the keys to make it quicker for myself. I did do a few iterations of the jaw. I didn't want it to be kind of slapping around, but I kind of still wanted him to be happy. So there's a little bit of the momentum taking the jaw when he hits the ground here, so he kind of opens. But I don't want it to be too out of control. Otherwise, it's just not going to look. It's not going to look right. Just I'm still tweaking the curves on that jaw. It looks a little bit open there, and I'm just grabbing them all together and dragging them down. So all my keys up and down that is. All my keys stay aligned. It's a really quick way of working in the graph editor. Alright, so I think I'm happy with the jaw. That's the first pass. So I'm now moving on to the feet. So I don't like the way that it takes off there. But I'm like, I'll come back, I'll do that later. So I'm going to work on this other foot first. And then I change my mind. So I use the Shift E trick to kind of just key the position right when it came down on the ground. And now I want to change the foot position on the ground. So I'm selecting those keys and then hitting the propagate tool. So that was a quick way of changing all of them. And now I'm going to use the 3D cursor as a marker just to make it easy to position that frame, that contact frame. And yeah, so I just use the 3D cursor as a marker in 3D space so that I could easily tweak it. Still working on that one foot. I wasn't happy with that position at all with that the frame at the takeoff. I think I switched to the other foot now. Here we go, rolling off onto the toe. I don't want it to be too weird with the heel, so I'm doing a little bit of back and forth. And then I want to like show his toe pushing off, so that's why I've animated the toe on the frame afterwards. I'm just looking at that arc is a little bit flat, so I'm going to kind of tweak that and add in an extra keyframe somewhere near the end as well. And our roll slap down. I'm going to slap it down over one frame and make sure I grab the heel and do that, and then flop the toe down one frame afterwards. Now I'd probably normally do that in the polishing stage, but we're getting close to the polish now. Just looking at the knee. I'm looking in the 3D viewport as well as the camera view. The camera view is the most important one. So just tweaking that arc, selecting that whole foot, and now I just want it to land one frame sooner. So I grabbed all those keys and I just moved them. Still tweaking that. So I think I can flash forward in time now. I'm just doing pretty much the same thing, and I will see you in the next little section. Alright, so this is the end of that pass. This is what I would be happy to call my splining pass. So I would give this to the client or whoever I'm working for and say, do you have any notes on this, to see if I can improve on it, and then start the polishing. So it's not totally final. There's quite a few errors in here, but you can see I have to still add the toe, but I think it's a little bit slow, and I don't like the way that this leg swings through, and this is a little bit soft here, the way this leg comes down. There's a tiny little bit of weird wobble at the end here, which I'm just going to tidy that up. So I've gone back to fast forward now. I wish I could animate this quickly in real life, but I can't. So at the start of the polish, we're going to make sure that we animate everything. So now it's time to animate the eyes, and the eyes didn't have any keyframes on them, so I just switched over to the whole character on selected and then changed it back to be available. So I'm just scaling them down over 2 frames and also translating them, and that's going to act as a blink. And then I'm just copying that pose and pasting it 3 or 4 frames as an open. And then, so that's an easy way of copying the same pose to make it quicker for myself. So now I'm doing a little bit of a squint during the jump, and then at the top of the arc, I'm kind of going to make his eyes a little bit bigger because he's happy. He's like, yay! And then when they hit the ground, I'm going to do a little bit of a wobble, and at the end I want to have one more blink. So just working on the end now. copying that pose or the closed frames from earlier. And I'm also adding an anticipation. So we're going the opposite way. I'm going to make them scale a little bit larger before they go in the blink. And that's just at the end here to kind of accentuate the eyes, because that's where I want the audience to be looking. And you'll see when we play the animation a little bit later on, it's going to add a nice little effect. So now I'm going to tweak those curves. I'm just going to grab one handle and change the spacing on one of the eyeballs, so you can see that the timing is the same, but they don't open and close at exactly the same rate. And that's, I'm going to have the eye on the screen left open and close a little bit faster. That'll make sense a little bit later when you watch the video. And now I moved on to fixing those feet, because I was still struggling to get them looking good. Yeah, so now I'm going to fast forward and look at the finished version of this pass. And this is the end of that pass that I've done. This is it's not my final polish pass, but let's have a look at what I've done so far. Whoops, let's Alt-A, play this one. So it's getting there. This is just before I show it as the final pass. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break after making a few notes. Because I've been staring at this for quite some time, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to see. So when I come back to it, after I've done a few more polishing things, then I'm going to see a lot more. So let's just make some notes over this one, as to what I'm going to change. Alright, so let's scrub through, see what I can see. Okay, so this here, I'm just going to, actually undo that. I can get a finer pencil now. So this toe here, I'm going to just add a little bit more flap to it. I'm looking at my knee here. I've got a bit of a knee pop over those frames. So look at it there, look at it there, look at it there. So it's a bit wobbly. I like how I've adjusted the spacing of the foot here. It's a lot nicer than the last time when it was just over here. So that's good. And I've broken up the feet so that they weren't moving at the same time, but I think I can, no, yeah, that's looking all right. I like the way this toe flaps down. That's looking good. And yeah, I still need to do a little bit of work on this weight shift. So I think I need to get him over more before this leg comes off the ground, because it's a little bit clunky. Let me get that out of the way. I like the eyes. The eyes turned out quite good, and the mouth. That's all right. I'll have a little bit of a break, and then I will come back and see what more things I can work on. All right, so I had a little bit of a break, and I've come back to have a look at it with fresh eyes, and I've seen a few more problems. And I've also shown it to a very good friend of mine who's also an animator, and he gave me some notes. So this is the final notes before we call it finished. So I have done some animation on his foot there, made it a little bit bigger. His suggestions were it was similar to mine in that I'll just play the animation. Play, Alt-A. He thought it was a little bit slow, like it could be faster in the actual jump. So he thought maybe take a frame out of this side of the jump, and maybe a frame out of this side of the jump. That's being the middle over there. And I think I decided on taking out frame 30. So we've got the spacing here, and then the next frame is here. So kind of going slow and then fast. So I was just going to get rid of this frame. I sacrificed showing this actual push off, but it'll turn out better in the end, I think. So that's one of the notes that he made. Also, I'm going to take this a little bit lower. So lower down with my anticipation. So just shift him down a little bit. And his notes were also about the weight shift at the end. Like, he feels a little bit light. There's also, can I zoom in on this one? I can. There's a bit of a wobble that I'm going to fix up in this weight shift. So I still need to get him more over this leg before he lifts up this leg off the ground, if that makes sense. There's some really bad arrows for you. So I need to get him more over that side. and then I'm going to call it done. So let me quickly, through the magic of editing, I'll come back and I'll show you the final product. Alright, so here we are. I've made those final little tweaks on our animation here, and we are calling it done. Now, is it perfect? No, it can never be perfect. I'd like to spend a lot more time on it. The more you look at it, the more problems that you'll see. But there's some points where you just have to go, this is as good as it's going to get. So that's all I'm going to do on this one. Let's have a closer look though. So I'll get in here. So we're scrubbing through. I've added, yeah, obviously a little bit more foot here. I was happy. Down here, he is much lower now. So it's a lower antic. So it makes this push off a little bit better. Now I got rid of frame 30. Obviously frame 30 is still here, but frame 30 was, the last version was on the ground, but now he's taking off. And you'll see that that gives it a lot more speed and fluidity through that jump. Is that a word? Yeah, it's a word. So I'll just play that. So just looking at this section here, you can see it's much snappier. It's a snappier movement there. Let's have a look at the legs. Now, I spoke in the previous workshop, the masterclass section of it, about the silhouette. Now this isn't a great silhouette, but what I've had to do was drag this leg at a different speed to this leg here, and that's because if they move at the same time, it's going to be really stiff. So what I've done is just kind of offset them a little bit, so that when he lands, it's not so robotic, even though he is a robot. So I've sacrificed a good silhouette for better animation. Sometimes you have to do that. All right, our landing here, he lands on the toe and rolls kind of on there. I could tidy that up a little bit, but that's good enough. And our ending here, you see that the weight is more over this leg, and then he's coming back. When this foot is planted, then he can start to slow down and go back this way, if you can see that arrow. All right, let me get rid of that drawing. So that was the weight shift that I was having problems with. All right, so I'm going to call this one done. Hopefully you guys can have a lot of fun doing this one, and I'll see you in the next video.